at what point, when you're thinking about going international for your business or startup, what are the right things to consider and think about? And that's something that I've thought about a lot. I've done a lot of international work. I moved to India when I was 18 and spent a summer there, spent a year in the Netherlands, went to about 20, 30 countries. Actually was in a Bollywood movie at one point as an extra. They needed some white guys in the background, so I may or may not have done that. I just walked in the background. I didn't do much. But nowadays what I do is I work at a company called Exonify here in town. We have several people from Exonify here today, which is a learning application for companies. And what I'm responsible for is the international customer success. So for any client outside of North America, once they're sold, that I basically own that. And in our case, it's a bit of a mixture between partners that we have, so partners or resellers, and direct customers that we have. And so as I've been going into this new role and thinking about a lot of these questions, there are some themes that came out of that I thought I'd share with you all. So the first is, so let's say maybe you've started just focusing on North America and you're thinking about going more internationally. What are the things that you need to do? So the first thing is I would say is to really research the culture and market readiness. There's a fantastic book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. And that book talks about innovators, early adopters, the majority, the late adopters, and how you have to market differently to those groups. So as an example, let's say you're a mobile application. There may be some markets in Africa or China which has gone mobile very quickly that may be early adopters for your product. There may be other environments, like for us at Exonify, there's some markets that are more traditional from an education perspective. They may be later adopters for us. So if you're looking at those markets, trying to think about where are they in the tech adoption life cycle and where might be the best priorities. But also, if you're going to go to those countries, really, really prepare yourself. So for me, that's talking to people in those countries, asking questions to them, reading the local newspapers, understanding the background of those countries, so that when you're there, you have some sort of credibility in some ways that you've done your homework. I'll give you an example. So I recently went to South Africa because we have a number of clients there, and I had never been to that country. So I was, for those of you that are familiar, South Africa was under a period of apartheid for many years, where the blacks and whites were not able to mingle, and there was systemic racism in the way that the government operated. So I was watching a number of documentaries on that, trying to understand Nelson Mandela and all these things going on, and then start looking at more recent things that are going on. So as an example, there's something called Black Economic Empowerment Quotas that establish quotas for hiring in each company that must be submitted to the government. There's also a new president in place, Cyril Ramaphosa at the bottom there, who came in to root out corruption. So I bring all this up because knowing all that is important for me to then work with clients in that environment. Having a new president in place means that there's more growth potential for those companies. The Black Economic Empowerment influences hiring decisions for those companies. So having that understanding, I felt, helped me when I got there, then come in and ask the right questions and try to get up to speed on the market. So if you're looking at these markets, really do that homework so when you go in, you can be as prepared as possible. Second is understanding how do people communicate. So as an example, in North America, things are communicated very much via email, conference calls, maybe visits, those things. One thing I found surprising with South Africa, I was trying to set up meetings when I was there, and I was emailing. I wasn't getting any responses. And finally someone's like, well, you just go to WhatsApp now. I'm like, wait, what? Like for me, WhatsApp is a personal communication tool for many people. But in many other countries around the world, it's not. It's a business communication tool. So when I started WhatsApping people, I got responses right away. And so what that taught me is, depending on the market I'm working with, I have to alter my communication to match what they're expecting. And that's how I can get things done in a better way. Similarly, you may right now get deals done in North America you can do entirely via conference call. You may sign a deal without ever meeting the client. But that's sometimes not going to be feasible. So as an example, I work with a lot of European clients. They expect a higher touch model. They expect me to come meet them in person and build that relationship. And without that, it's going to be harder for us to get where we need to go. So that may be a more expensive model in order to do, but necessary if you want to crack into those markets. So from a communication perspective, those are two things I've taken away the last little while. Third is my not so pretty diagram that I made last night, which is the partner question. So let's say you're looking to tackle Europe. Do you set up an office owned by your company in Europe? Or do you work with a local partner that may resell your product? Whatever the right answer depends on a few things that are important to you. So, like, if I look at the first one, the level of control. So if you set up your own office in London, in the United Kingdom, yeah, you're going to own that. Versus if you have a partner in a different area of the world that is reselling your product on your behalf, they may have a wider solution. So you have less control, but they're going to have a little bit more flexibility. The second thing is market understanding. That partner is going to probably be ingrained in there, have relationships. Maybe they have, like in our case, we have some partners that are training organizations that resell our software as part of their larger offering. So they have existing relationships, they know the market, and they can position our offering as part of that larger offering. So that market understanding piece, the partner gets the advantage versus the direct is going to take more time. Then also in the financial investment perspective, if you're going to go direct and you're going to set up an office and hire people just to sell your solution, that's a lot more expensive. Whereas if you're going to have a partner set up, they may have a salesperson that sells a few things and your product. So the investment is a little bit less for them. So those are some things to think about in that decision. And I've seen companies go both ways. I think the right model depends, can you find the right partner? How much control do you need? And what resources do you have? And finally, the last thing is also feeding those global insights back into your product team. So let's say you have an app. Is that app built just for the North American market, or is it built for a global market? So like, that's one thing I'm thinking about right now, is as I get all these insights going to different countries, bringing that back into the company. And how do we make decisions about the product that keep in mind those global audiences? So, are you a North American app that's just going to adapt globally, or are you maybe a global app or company that's going to take in those different considerations? So those are a few questions to think about if you're deciding to go international. All right, any questions? Everyone really wants to watch the game. 2-1 for us? All right. Yeah. 2-2 now. 2-2, okay.
So I perform a similar role in customer success. I'm a customer success manager, and time product with customer success is important, and it's a value at Schema App that we have. How do you bring back your insight from your global travel to the product development team? Do you have any formal processes? How does that conversation look like?
Yeah. Well, Jackie could probably answer that. He's on the product team for Exotic Life. But what I'll just say from my perspective is, so we have an internal application called AHA, where we can input new ideas, and then other people on the team can upvote them. So you can see, has one customer requested an idea, or is it 10? Right? So you can start to leverage that to have a bit more systemic approach than as opposed to going more with the intuition or gut. So we do that. Obviously, there's a larger roadmap that ties it all together. But we also started a new meeting recently called the Arena, which is where all of the customer success team meets. And we basically have to put in one idea that's most important for us right now for our existing customers. And then we have to vote amongst us all. And then whatever capacity the product team has for small projects, whichever ones get the top, will get that. So an example recently is we have because we're a gamified learning application, we have a number of games in the system that are very North American oriented. There's golf, we have a curling one for some reason. We have, what's the other one? Football, like American football. And on my travels, I'm like, we need a soccer one. Like internationally, like we need to speak to those audiences. There's also a World Cup. We can do some sort of competitions around that. So I managed to get some support, and then we got that one upvoted in the last meeting. So those are two of the ways that we do it that have worked decently well, I would say.